Welcome to Series 16, Space for Women show, Space for Sustainability Development Goals. Today's show is dedicated to bringing the SDGs to Earth and outer space. The United Nations has developed the 2030 Agenda for Sustainability Development. Our aim today is to also learn about what are the SDGs and what are the main Space for SDG benefits, what are the challenges for the Space for SDGs 2030 Agenda. Please welcome Marc Buckley. He's a serial and social entrepreneur, an SDG advocate, a World Economic Forum expert, sustainable futurist, and sustainable innovator. Today he will share with us the SDGs and the first ever moonshot, and Mrs. Eva Vati, she's the CEO of Vati Sweden, an entrepreneur, business strategist, and SDG for business, and also our UNOSA mentor, Space for Women Network mentor, Ms. Marushka Stra. She is the World Space Week Association Executive Director and mentor. Welcome, dear participant. Without further ado, I introduce you to Anna Rosa Cristina. She's our moderator today, and also UNOSA Space for Women mentor.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm a pleasure again to be here to collaborate in the platform and to be a moderator. So as you Hein already mentioned at the beginning, we are going to have three presentations. The first one from Marc. He's going to give us an overview of the 17 goals for Sustainable Development Goal to Earth. And Mrs. Eva and Mrs. Maruska also going to give us also an overview for the Sustainable Development Goals for the space, for outer space. So it's a pleasure. And for our first panelist, just a little more about his background. Mr. Marc Buckley, he's an activist. He's a resilient futurist. He's an advocate for sustainable development goals. He's also a global food reformist, and he's an environment social governance consultant and advisor. Please, you have the floor, Mr. Marc Buckley.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate being here. I'd like to welcome you all to A Decade of Action 2020. 10 years left to go to the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Already 5 years into it, and I would be surprised to know how many people on the call today can name all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals with their eyes closed, how many of them can have applied them into their business plans and into their daily lives. We are all stardust. We are made up of star stuff. Have you ever heard that before? Now, I'm a big fan of Carl Sagan, and the basic elements of life are oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen. Those are the basic elements of life and what we are made up of, but it's also what we find in the interiors of collapsing stars and what our Earth, our home, is made up of. Carl Sagan, famous astronomer, my hero, a great futurist that pushed the exploration of space and enlightened us all, said this in a famous quote of his. He said, "The nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, the carbon in our apple pies were all made in the interiors of collapsing stars. We are all made of star stuff." This is the first catalog image of Earth. Was taken December 24th, 1968 by the Apollo 8 mission. It was Christmas Eve, and this image was taken by mistake. It was taken it wasn't meant to happen, but it did. If you were to hear the space chatter on the Apollo 8 mission at the time, they would say, "Oh my gosh," lots of swearing, and they would say, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing? I only have black and white film in the camera. Quickly, get me some color film. Are you seeing this?" And you can hear scrambling and kind of frustration because they were worried they weren't going to get the color film. Luckily, they got the color film, and this is the photo they took. It is the first catalog image of our Earth, and it is the beginning of all environmental movements for our entire world. Environmental, ecological movements, because it's the first time ever we have seen our planet as one spaceship, the spaceship Earth. This is a side view of our planet Earth, and it shows our atmosphere, the thin blue crust, protective layer that gives us the right temperature and protects our planet from the elements of the depths of outer space. I want you to know that we are using this thin blue atmosphere as an open sewer. Every single day, we are dumping all our garbage and waste into this atmosphere, actually treating it like an open sewer system. The amount of energy trapped by man-made global warming pollution is now the equivalent to 500,000 Hiroshima atomic class bombs going off every single day, 365 days per year. So I hope no one had a heart attack or had an accident in their pants, but that was just one Hiroshima class atomic bomb going off. Imagine that 500,000 times a day. I believe by the second one, we would do something about all the emissions, all the pollution that we're putting into our atmosphere and into our world. This image comes from the US government and the Atomic Central Society, and is really important for this overview effect. I don't know if many of you have heard that, but those who are familiar with space and NASA, it's something that only 500 astronauts to date have seen live, our Earth from outer space, and they're calling it this overview effect or a cosmic perspective. All those who have seen our world live have had a cognitive shift in awareness and interconnectedness, a form of euphoria that compels a person or one to do something about the state of our home, our world, our only spaceship. This is the second catalog image of our planet. It's called the Blue Marble. It was taken December 7th, 1972. It was taken by a crew as they were traveling towards the moon, Apollo 17. And this overview effect, this cosmic perspective, is something when we see our planet from outer space, and the image and the visuals and the discussion I'm going to give you in my presentation as one of that cosmic perspective, that overview effect. Now, most climate leaders, most climate speakers and activists and environmentalists, they show you this picture for some of the reasons I mentioned earlier, but they show it to you to show you that we're all on the same planet, moving in the same direction. They're hoping that you will have this overview cosmic perspective, that you will feel like there are no nations and borders and we should do something to protect our environment. I show it to you for two different reasons. The first one is I want you to realize that you are an integral part of Earth and that everything we have is here on this one and only planet. And I want you to connect yourself as part of a symbiotic Earth and feel like you are deeply ingrained. But the second one is a kind of a question, but I won't make you think about it too long. Why do you think I show you this image? What does this image mean, or how do we have this image? I told you who took it. I told you where it came from. On the bottom left, you can see that the source is NASA. I want you to know that the only reason we have this image, the only reason we have began the environmental movement in 1968, and even more so after this image arrived in 1972, is because of innovation. This image is sheer innovation. Emerging technologies, satellites, rockets, spaceships. Had we had not gone to the moon and by accident looked back, we would have not discovered our very own Earth. This is sheer innovation, and it gives us the lifeblood, the heartbeat, the up-to-date real-time data, data sets and information, geospatial data of what's going on to the minute, to the second on our planet. NASA, Google, Earth, and many, many other organizations, well over 1,000, collect this data every day from satellites, from scientific fleets, all around the world. It gives us innovation, a lifeblood, a heartbeat, a pulse of our planet, and it lets us know that we need to protect it. It lets us know what's coming. It lets us know what pollution is here and how to look at our world. I belong to an organization within the United Nations. It's called Digital Ecosystem for Our Planet. It's all geospatial data put together towards betterment of our planet and our life on Earth. We have well over 1,000 scientific fleet missions around our Earth looking at our planet every day and in close orbit that are looking at other planets, stars, asteroids, meteors that are moving around our planet and looking back at our planet to really give us information. Carl Sagan was influential in several of these satellites, especially the one that went out and got the blue dot image. He was also, Al Gore was also an instrumental person who has a couple satellites that have come back and looked back at our planet. It's called the Global Earth Observation, a system of systems that give our Earth health, disaster, energy, climate, agriculture, biodiversity of our world, weather, and water. And it is all based off of this big concept called moonshot thinking. That's right. You've probably heard of it before. Moonshot thinking is the original thought that John F. Kennedy, NASA, and the United States of America did when they joined the space race against the Russians and the Sputnik rocket to put 2 men on the moon and bring them back safely to Earth. That's moonshot thinking. Well, we have moonshot thinking today, but I have a question for you. Who has a better bonky moonshot than this? This is the United Nations General Secretary at the time of the signing of the Paris Agreement in 2015. Ban Ki-moon, he was key in the development of the Sustainable Development Goals and very key in the Paris Agreement and the Paris Agenda, which you should all know about, that came about at COP21 in Paris. And in that development, there was another moonshot, and it is the Sustainable Development Goals. I want you to know that the Sustainable Development Goals were developed before the Paris Agreement, September 24th, 2015, and they are the world's first ever global moonshot. So The race to the moon, John F. Kennedy was one nation with a few thousand other individuals and collaborations with a couple nations. But the Sustainable Development Goals are the world's first ever global moonshot. 197 countries came together and agreed upon the goals, ratified them, and put them into place the first time ever in historical precedence, a history. It is a historical date in our world, and it is a roadmap and plan for our future. The reason I want you to really let that sink in and hit home, 197 countries came together for the first time ever and agreed on a global action plan, a moonshot, a historical precedence. If you've ever been around politicians or any international organization, it's hard for two countries to decide where they're going to go to lunch, let alone on a roadmap for the future for humanity. They can't even agree on the basic simple things, and now they have. 2015. This is how the Sustainable Development Goals were presented to us. Very linear and lateral. I have to apologize because when they were presented to us wrong. They were presented to us very linear, lateral, flat, very colorful. And when I tell people I'm an advocate for the Sustainable Development Goals, they'll say, oh, great. What are they? They don't even know, or if they do know, I get the comment, oh, I like number 1. It's red, my favorite color. That's the one I'm working on, no poverty. And I say, great, but did you know that it is virtually impossible to work on one sustainable development goal and not touch on all the others because they're intricately tied together as a system? If you were to work on number 1, no poverty, guess what would happen? You would automatically touch on number 2, zero hunger, number 3, good health and well-being, 4, quality education, number 11, sustainable cities and communities, number 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, and absolutely for certain you would touch on number 12, responsible consumption and production, climate action, number 13, 14, life below water, and 15, life on land, because they're all tied together as a system. For the United Nations, I wrote the Sustainable Development Goal Manifesto. And before I read that to you, I want you to envision yourself, whether you have to close your eyes or not, and think what a world would feel like in December 2030 if we achieved all the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm going to read this manifestation now, and I want you to envision and play along with me what it would feel like to live in a world that I'm going to read to you now. Imagine a world where there is no poverty and zero hunger. We have good health and well-being, quality education, and full gender equality everywhere. There is clean water and sanitation for everyone. Affordable and clean energy has created decent work and sustainable economic growth. Our prosperity is fueled by investments in resilient industry, innovation, and infrastructure, and that has reduced inequalities. We live in sustainable cities and communities, and responsible consumption and production has healed our planet. Climate action has stopped and reversed the warming of our planet, and we have flourishing life below water and diverse life on and abundant diverse life on land. We enjoy peace and justice through strong institutions and have built long-term partnerships for the goals. I want you to know that that is a beautiful future that I want to live in, and I hope you do as well. The reason I wrote that is because I want you to get a vision and a feeling of what it's going to be like when we achieve that. What it is a sustainable development infrastructure for the entire world. This is the true way that we should have been presented with the Sustainable Development Goals, and that is as a wedding cake, a pie, a chart, a graph. The bottom layer is our biosphere. The next layer is our society and economy. And the top is partnership for the goals. But I'll tell you right now that the bottom layer is the absolute most important. And the reason why, it's how we make any product on this planet, whether it's spaceships, rockets, food, or computers. It's all made with the elements and materials from our biosphere. And if we don't have those and protect them, we won't be able to make any products to help any other level of society. The other thing that most people don't understand is all 17 Sustainable Development Goals are tied to agriculture, seafood, food, and beverages, and they are all for us as individuals. They're our lifeblood and pulse. They're what feed us and give us energy. And I only have 2 more slides to go, or 1 more slide to go, and that is this other chart, or this pie that you may be familiar with, and that is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's the basic physiological needs of humanity. And the bottom 2 layers are breathing, food, water. The safety layer in red is security of body, employment, resources, family, health, property. And I'll tell you, by just going back to this slide, that's what the Sustainable Development Goals are. They're for each and every one of us. They're for businesses, cities, countries, communities, and for us as individuals. And I leave you with this last word of wisdom from Carl Sagan, how I began our discussion.
To racial, sexual, and religious chauvinism, and to rabid nationalist fervor are beginning not to work. A new consciousness is developing which sees the earth as a single organism and recognizes that an organism at war with itself is doomed. We are one planet.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry I went over, but that's all.
Okay. Marc, I don't have words for your presentation. Was so you kept a lot of things so important, and thank you to brought us the Carl Sagan, our American astronomer, who inspired us a lot. He was a pioneer to the messages to push, also extremely important role, and for sure. I agree with you in totally. We are the nitrogen. The nitrogen is our DNA.
Yeah.
And,
could I say one thing that's real interesting? Although I'm a big fan of Carl Sagan and space, I'm a big fan of women in space and women, period, in the space movement. Most people who know me and how I speak, I believe the biggest way to draw down and save our planet is to empower women and to empower girls. But through Carl Sagan, he was married to 2 wonderful women. His first wife was Lynn Margulis. She is one of the scientific leaders and pioneers in her area about the way we look at our world. And his second wife, Ann Durian, I just interviewed her daughter. I just interviewed Carl Sagan's daughter recently on my podcast. I want you to know they are the most fabulous women in the world that have contributed to space exploration, to our Earth, to looking at our planet another way. And it is, even though I mentioned Carl Sagan, I think his power and a lot of the things he did came from the great women that were behind him. But now it's time for the women to step in the forefront.
for sure, with this platform developed now for the 9 nations for Space for Women, we have this role now to inspire and create new leaders, women, and for this. And again, Marc, thank you very much. This presentation and our presentation will be recorded, and I recommend a lot for after everybody come again to the presentation of Marc. So I just have an observation that at least in 2030, we are going to arrive at 50% of the goal. Do you believe this, that at least 50% is in the resolution is marked this, that the intention is to arrive at least 50%. Do you believe, or we are going to have more challenge for this?
I actually believe that we're going to reach it 100%.
Oh.
And I'll tell you why. Because of space, because of what I know on the exponential function and how quickly humanity can pivot on a dime to do amazing things. And if we apply the newest innovations and technologies, if we use environmentalism and that way of thinking, we will be able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by that time. It's not looking good right now. It started out, the year was started out pretty good, but I believe that humanity can do miraculous things and will rally.
Okay.
If I may share something, in 2018 at the IEC, I raised my arm and asked, what if we don't meet the 2030 timeline? So the director of UNOSA, Ms. Simonetta Di Pippo, she said, the youth is asking good questions. Don't worry. Without space, we won't be able to meet the 17 SDGs. And then, you know, the conversation further, you know, why would we not want space as an 18th SDG? You know, if the statement was literally, without space, we won't be able to meet the 17 SDGs. So then my path was very clear. Space. Just wanted.
Nice. So, thank you again, Marc. So I'd like now to introduce our second speaker, Mrs. Eva. Yes, Ms. Eva is an entrepreneur and a business strategist who helps executives, business, and entrepreneurs. And she is the CEO and the founder of VAT of Sweden, which is one of the first companies in the world given certification on integrating sustainability into business strategy. She has a loyal community of over 15,000 people who are committed to creating a better world by running business. Welcome, Mrs. Eva. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Anna, for your nice introduction. So I will just share my slides and I will be talking about what does space have to do with the SDGs. All right, so what does space have to do with the SDGs? Space technologies are actually, as you said in the panel before, key for all SDGs, and especially space-based services and technologies are key in understanding climate change. And I will just explain how that looks like and work. But first, yes, a short introduction. So Vati of Sweden, the company that I run, is a company that educates and certifies individuals and companies on how to integrate the Sustainable Development Goals into business strategy according to the educational methodology SDG certified business. And we have transformed now over 100 companies in 12 countries. So space assets and technologies can be used to support most, if not all, SDGs. In some cases, the use of space technology and the availability of space-based services is nowadays so common that it's taken for granted. So, for example, space technology can provide climate change monitoring, as we saw Marc Buckley actually showed us that, and also weather forecasting, disaster management, search and rescue operations, smart agriculture, high-speed internet connectivity, and tailored online educational content delivered via satellite, infrastructure mapping and monitoring, smart cities, and open source databases. So one main advantage is that space provides non-invasive tools with capacity for repeatable objective measurements, which enable a more equitable and fair decision-making process, which you will notice later on in this presentation. However, a global partnership is needed to ensure that countries are fully aware of the potential of space to implement and monitor the SDGs, and to ensure that the needs of all countries are taken into account reducing existing gaps when designing and operating new space-based infrastructure. So space technology and space application can help government not only in achieving the SDGs, but also in monitoring the progress of their implementation. So as you can see, all of these areas where space technology can pursue the SDGs requires some kind of knowledge and some kind of education that's within this specific area, and that is actually STEM. So STEM, what is STEM? STEM education refers to the integrated teaching and learning of the subjects of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. STEM education is usually presented through hands-on and relevant real-world experience, including space learnings. So why is STEM important? Well, STEM is important because our world depends on it, as you can see. As you could see on the previous slide also, climate action, the economy, our general well-being, it's all backed by science, technology, engineering, and math. The problem, though, is that globally, 72% of scientific researchers are men. So only 1 in 5 countries achieve what is classed as gender parity, with women making up 45 to 55% of researchers. And in only a handful do women working in science outnumber men, with distinct regional variations. So in the EU, 41% of scientists and engineers are women. But women outnumber men in those professions in Lithuania, Bulgaria, Latvia, Portugal, and Denmark, as well as in the non-EU member Norway. Across Europe as whole, men dominate high and medium-high technology manufacturing. 83% of scientists and engineers are male in those sectors, compared with 55% in the scientific areas services. But less than a third of researchers are women in Hungary, Luxembourg, Finland, and perhaps most surprisingly in Germany. So therefore, gender equality is truly important for STEM and for space technology. Women and girls represent half of the world's population and therefore also half of its potential. So SDG 5, which is in the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 5 seeks to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Gender equality and women's empowerment have advanced in recent decades. Women's and girls' access to education has improved. Nevertheless, gender equality remains a challenge, as I earlier explained, for countries worldwide, and the lack of equality is a major obstacle to sustainable development because differences between gender and wealth remain a hinder access to higher quality education. So gender equality, besides being a fundamental human right, is essential to achieve peaceful societies with full human potential and sustainable development. Moreover, it has been shown that empowering women spurs innovation, productivity, and economic growth. And as numerous studies have shown, educating women remains one of the key ways to help countries respond to environmental challenges. For example, a recent report from the US think tank Brookings highlights the critical importance of education, both in formal and informal spaces, in setting girls up to take on climate change leadership roles later in life. So space technologies can actually support women's empowerment through access to quality education, even in remote and isolated communities, and support for female entrepreneurs through access to training, soft infrastructure information, and safety in the work environment, and career development opportunities, often within STEM. So to get women into STEM education, we need to start from the basics, from the primary school. So it all starts with SDG 4, which is quality education, education and quality education, and is also one of the cornerstones of sustainable development, I would say. So SDG 4 aims at ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. This goal ensures that all girls and boys complete free primary and secondary school by 2030. It also aims to provide equal access to affordable vocational training, to eliminate gender and wealth disparities, and achieve access to a quality higher education. Estimates shows that among those 59 million children, 1 in 5 of them had dropped out, and recent trends suggest that 2 out of 5 out of school children will never set foot in a classroom. And the Sustainable Development Goals clearly recognize that this gap must be closed, even as the international community more explicitly addresses the challenges of quality and equity in education. So there is a saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, but if you teach him to fish, and you can feed him for life. So that's obvious, that's the way it should be, shouldn't it? Education is one of the cornerstones of both the green economy, climate change, and the global pursuits of the SDGs. It is quite simply impossible to engineer a rapid shift to a decarbonized, clean, and healthy economy without focus on the skills required to enable and deliver such a transition. And although government may be the primary provider of education in many countries, it is also a topic for the business community. So well-educated labor pool makes businesses and economies more resilient and better able to adapt to complex challenges such as climate change and environmental degradation. So as we can see that space technology can actually provide high-speed internet connectivity and tailored online educational content delivered via satellite. And electronic attendance monitoring and provision of incentives for parents to reduce those dropout rates, as I earlier explained. Remote learning, e-learning, and lifelong learning opportunities for remote and isolated communities is also one of what space technology can provide. So if connectivity can be delivered, the potential for digital education services to support the pursuit of SDGs is considerable. SDG 4 can be achieved with these kind of technologies because digital systems can help relieve economies of key educational challenges such as teacher shortages and lack of infrastructure. In Africa, for example, e-learning is the best possible solution for democratizing higher education and ensuring that access to quality higher education is not limited by infrastructure or tools. And also, all of this above is contributing to gender equality and equal rights. So this was my short talk about what does space has to do with SDGs. Well, everything. And if we just summarize it, the 2030 agenda needs space technology to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, right? And space technology needs quality education and especially STEM and full potential of the world's population. So therefore, gender equality and equal rights are essential. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva, for your wonderful presentation. Also, your highlights the point for education. And of course, for the women, we are 25% in the STEM. So we need to increase this. We are on the road now to increase this, and for sure, with the work of the United Nations, the platform for space for women, we are going to increase this. And yes, I agree with you that the point of education is the key, and the future could be the digital education is our future to reach all people in developing countries. So remotely education will be easily arrive there. They have access for all knowledge.
Yeah.
So this is the key. So
Yes.
and then we are going to increase our esteem as well. Will be weaker. So
Yeah.
thank you very much, Eva.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
A lot. So thank you. So now we would like to introduce our third panelist, Mrs. Maruska Sira. She's also one of the selected Space for Women at the UNOSA platform. Mrs. Maruska Strass, I don't know if I can spell correct her surname, is passionate about space and space law. Ever since she read her first chapter on international space law, her interest only deepened during her internship at the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, where she gained significant insight in the work of both public and private sector involved in the space industry. Maruska is a member of the European Center for Space Law, the International Institute of Space Law, and the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics Space Traffic Management Working Group, where she's leading the efforts to socialize the outcomes of the working group. Mrs. Maruska, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. If you can please put on my presentation, I would really appreciate it.
Yes, give me a second.
And also thank you for the two speakers before me. These were really interesting presentations. I enjoyed them very much and they were very informative. Today I would like to talk to you some more about SDGs in connection to space, but also to space technologies and space applications, because there are numerous ways in which space can help achieve sustainable development goals. And I will touch upon briefly upon some of them. Let me first introduce World Space Week Association and what we do. Our mission is to strengthen the link between space and society, and we do so through public education, participation, and dialogue on the future of space activities. We use the UN declared World Space Week as a focus and as a platform for the before mentioned activities.
Can you see the screen share?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Yes.
You can go to the next slide, please. We are a non-profit, non-governmental organization founded in 1981, and we are supporting the UN in coordination of World Space Week. We have a permanent observer status in COPUS and are members of the International Astronautical Federation. World Space Week is held annually 4 to 10 of October worldwide. Last year, we reported over 8,000 events in 96 countries, and there are numerous activities happening all around the world at that time. Our theme this year is Satellites Improve Life. And while we are aware and conscious of the challenges that many of the organizers may face this year, we can see that many organizations took advantage of space-related technologies and managed to find ways to remain connected and active over this week, making our theme for 2020 especially relevant. I'm sure that you will appreciate, Marc, that our 2021 World Space Week theme is Women in Space. World Space Week Association is committed to contributing to the achievements of, one slide before, please. Perfect, thank you. Is committed to contributing to the achievements of SDGs. And we are especially focused on SDG 4, SDG 8, SDG 9, and SDG 17. With our work, we help building the workforce of tomorrow. We are educating the public. We are helping organizations promote their achievements, and we are also demonstrating public support for space activities. If you can please go to the next slide. The UN developed the 2030 Agenda for the Sustainable Development and noted that many of the space technologies are the key for the achievement of SDGs, but also to the targets that they address. Here, I would like to mention a document, a UN General Assembly resolution entitled Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This document recognizes the importance of space technologies and applications for the achievement of SDGs. In particular, Earth observation and GNSS are recognized for their important role when it comes to the achievement of them. If we can please go to the next slide. As mentioned before, there are numerous ways through which space technologies can help us achieve SDGs. On the next slide, I mentioned a few, but there are far from all ways in which we can use space technologies. You will probably notice that many of them overlap. And I would like to point out that even while it might not immediately seem that way, these technologies can be used to not only monitor our environment, but also help in, for example, track and prevent human trafficking, which is very important for protection of the most vulnerable population. And even here, the goals overlap. This is a part of both SDG 5, gender equality, and SDG 16, peace and justice. If we can go to the next slide, here you see several of the ways in which space technologies and applications can contribute to SDGs. Because of space technologies, we can forecast natural disasters, but also better coordinate our responses and possible aid. We can optimize crop production, we can improve livestock management, but we can also monitor air quality and traffic. I believe that given the current situation, we are becoming especially aware of the way we can use these technologies to track the spread of diseases, but also monitor patterns and plan for better disease control. Even in this regard, we can enable remote healthcare, which became very relevant in the past months. We are all benefiting from high-speed internet connectivity and different educational online platforms, as it was mentioned before. I would also like to go back to World Space Week here. Because of space technologies, we can remain connected and have access to different educational resources and still participate in the largest space-related event, even when we socially distance. This also leads toward a better quality education that is accessible, even in more remote and isolated communities. Access, training, access to information, and also safety of the work environment is especially important for gender equality and in support of female entrepreneurship. We have better ways of forecasting weather and monitoring water quality, and we can now better identify sites for the production of renewable energy, but also better survey seismic activities as well as the amount of energy that we generally require. Space technologies are contributing to a number of sectors that are benefiting global economies and also to the increase of GDPs all around. They can also be used for maintenance of road infrastructure and, for example, for smart mobility. I cannot stress enough how connectivity is crucial for development, especially in remote and isolated areas. We have seen this in World Space Week as well, through participation of schools that are in very remote areas and normally have students who don't have easy access to traveling or to any other areas, not only abroad, but also in their own countries. And we also have better access to reliable information. This also leads to higher participation in democratic processes. Important to give special attention is also conflict monitoring. We can see an overlap of potential contributions to SDGs here as well, with, for example, reliable access to information and enabling of participation in democratic process. All this, of course, also rely on international cooperation initiatives, open sources, databases, and exchange of ideas and information. Excuse me, I lost my connection. So, I would really like to hear from all of you, from our attendees, in what ways you see SDGs and space connected and how we can bring them closer together and how we can achieve them better. I thank you for your attention, and I do hope you will join us this year in World Space Week. And also, as I said before, I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Maruska, for your presentation. Really was very good. Also give us an overview about the SDG for space, especially for the Earth observation, that we can monetary things, agriculture. One thing is also to mapping diseases. That is something I do particularly in my company. And of course, for natural disasters, we have also do not when spider do this a lot. And there is also, you mentioned some overlaps for the SDG number 5. So you relate also with the air traffic. So I think we all need to be aware of all these things, and we need to work to put the SDG continue in space and to reach the goals in the 2013 agenda. So now I give the floor to Hein, please.
Thank you. I think thank you for our great speakers. Thank you, Marc, Eva, and Marusha. We now have a few minutes for Q&A. If you have any questions, please unmute yourself and ask panelists directly, else we're gonna just filter some questions from the chat.
Can I say something while we're waiting for a question?
Sure.
So not only Marushka, but Eva also brought it up. And I just want to make it clear for all the listeners who don't know, there was the talk about the new global satellite internet, that's Starlink broadband, it's from Elon Musk. That was a project that was approved November 2018, I believe it was, is when it was approved by the FCC. There's already almost 2,000 satellites that have already been launched. There's already been the first complaints, but also the first positive news about seeing them go in an array, almost like stars shooting across the sky, and that they're having to change their panel configuration so that they're not too bright in the night and distracting from those stargazers who are mapping our space. But there is not just only Starlink broadband who's working on that. There's at least 3 other companies I know that are working on that as well. But if you think about that, what it is, it's the rising billions who will now have one global SIM. There's not going to be a country code number for where you dial in. It's your global citizen telephone number, so to say, and access to data. And those rising billions in Africa and India, Bangladesh and China, or wherever they are who are in developing countries, will now have the same computing power in their hand that we had when we first went to the moon on the Apollo 11 mission. For those of you who didn't know about that, I just wanted to clarify it.
Thanks for sharing with us. Marc Pavitra asked, knowing how interconnected all the SDGs are, how can we avoid being overwhelmed and know exactly where to start?
Is that a question for all of us, or
all of you? If you know all targets and
yeah, well, if I may answer that for businesses, at least, but I think it works for every kind of organization, is really to start by looking at your value chain, to see how your value chain looks like, and to connect with your stakeholders, both internal and external stakeholders, and to look at the positive impacts that your company or organization is doing towards the SDGs, but also looking at the negative aspects and looking at how you can reduce those regarding the SDGs. So in this kind of process, you could actually find focus and choose where to start, so that you don't get overwhelmed with all the 17 SDGs and 169 targets. You have to choose to start because otherwise you will get overwhelmed. So this is a good way to start. Look at the value chain, connect with your stakeholders, and do an assessment to look at the positive aspects and the negative aspects.
Thank you, Eva. Adrienne asked, I wonder if in the way that education plans are often tied to educational standards, for example, next generation science standards in the US, perhaps the SG could be factored into curriculum planning in the same way? In other words, if the SDGs are so important, why are they not part of the school curriculum? And why Western countries such as Germany, less than 10% are aware of the SDGs?
I can answer that if you'd like. So all the Sustainable Development Goals are integrated and globally should be integrated by all the countries who signed off on them, not only at the Paris Agreement, but in September 24th. They are not included in the curriculum, and it's been very slow going to get schools, universities, colleges, and grade schools up to speed on them. There is a fabulous organizations called, it's one that I belong to, it's called the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network. They're probably the biggest data repository of the Sustainable Development Goals. Professor Jeffrey Sachs is the head of that institute and has written several books on the Sustainable Development Goals, is also an advocate and also used to special envoy to the Secretary General and accompanies that. There are free online graduate level MOOC courses and non-graduate level MOOC courses, massive open online courses about the Sustainable Development Goals. They are, I must tell you, all very extensive, all very detailed. You know, when people say, can you give me a talk about the Sustainable Development Goals in, 5, 10, 15 minutes? I almost have to laugh because what, in respect, you're asking me to solve all the world's problems in 10 or 15 minutes, and the world's much more complex and complicated than that, made up of systems. And so it's really about taking that time and integrating it in our schools' curriculums. Currently, I have to say there's more universities and colleges and institutes, executive institutes on board on SDG education than there are grade school and lower high schools and junior high schools and grade schools on board. But it is a transition that is actually coming about fairly rapidly. One last caveat to that, and I have to kind of, even though I represent and work a lot with the UN, it wasn't until the end of last year that the UN even started to force all their UN physical internal employees to start to get certified and educated on the Sustainable Development Goals, which I think is a tragedy. If anybody should know about them first and foremost, it should be them. The last thing to kind of make that clear, and the reason why it is such, is because the Sustainable Development Goals are Project Everyone. They're for everyone. They're open source. They're transparent, and they're Creative Commons. Nobody owns them. The only thing that you're not allowed to do is take the Sustainable Development Goals and put the UN logo next to them. But you can take them, you can reconfigure them, you can use 1, 2, 3, or all of them. You can apply them to your lives, your business models. If you come up with a creative way to do it, you can apply them, but they're actually for you. And now the UN has provided basic tools and some guidance, targets and indicators and different things to help us. But really it's up to us now to apply them in our lives. And more importantly, so once we apply them in our lives, we're actually showing our governments, communities, our schools, how important it is, and that should be ingrained in our core curriculum. But they are the ones who really need to meet to the commitments and the standards and the agreements so that we reach them all. It's not the best answer for your question, but it's still in the transitional phase, but it is coming. If you would like to see that happen, then please reach out to an advocate, reach out to the UN, reach out to the United Nations Sustainable Development Network or the SDG Academy and say, hey, help, I want to be involved, I want to learn.
Pavitra, thank you, Marc. Pavitra asked, how do we balance development of telecom constellations which directly contribute to several SDGs and the issue of of an overlay polluted LEO orbit? Who would like to answer this?
I can. Yes, I think this needed to be most of the countries in your national space legislation need to apply the mitigation standards for these already developed by the United Nations, by the Committee on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space. So we have already standards developed. So countries who have now your national space legislation must to apply these standards, these rules.
Thank you for this answer. Our time is now over. Thank you everyone for your participation. If you have any further questions, follow up, please do let us know. Thank you everyone. And please, we have the Space for Women, UNOSA.org website, I believe. If you decided to connect directly via the UNOSA webpage with a mentor who fits your needs, you can go there on the webpage to apply to become a mentee. It's totally free. And if you have any further questions, just email support@SpaceConneX.com. And we also have the Space for Women show Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The recordings are all available there, and we would be very appreciative if you filled out a feedback survey to learn more about the challenges that you as a mentee have. We may bring those to share on another show in 2 weeks' time, sharing some success stories. We would like to put you mentees into the spotlight and learn from you. So thank you everyone, and everyone stay safe and have a beautiful weekend.